Same thing with the rotor. If it's stuck, you might just have to tap on it with a hammer. Well, we're on the other side here, and I'm noticing that this one has both tabs like that. So what's actually occurred is they're just breaking off like that. So if yours aren't broke, you'll actually have both these tabs. You're gonna have to pry out of the way to get the pad out. Alright, so now we're doing the rear pads and rotors on this 2012 Charger RT. The lower models have a thin disc, I believe. It's gonna be the same process though. It'll be the same for 2011 and 2014. Should be the same for the Chrysler 300C. Might also be the same for other years as well. But this specifically is, I believe, a 2012 Charger RT. So once you got it up on the jack stand securely, wheels off, might have to tap around on it with a wood block and a hammer if it's stuck. Then you're gonna need to take 2 mounting bolts, one here, one there, to remove the caliper. You want something under the caliper to set the caliper on so you're not hanging it from the brake hose, or you can damage the brake hose. Take those bolts off, we'll pull the caliper off, take the pads out, and do the rotor. Okay, for me on this car is an 18mm for those mounting bolts. Alright, there's your 2 mounting bolts, and then you should be able to just pry this off with a screwdriver. Okay, pay attention to how your pads go in before you remove them, so you know how the new ones go back in. Pop them out. Okay, rotor will come off now. If it's stuck, you can just tap on it with a hammer. Also, this is your e-brake cable here. These pads touch the inside of the rotor here, and that's how the e-brake works. Let's see here. I think that's just it. Because usually if these are too tight and you can't get it off because it's stuck, there will be a hole so you can back this off, or it'll pull those in more so they're not contacting the inside of the rotor, so you can get it off. Okay, Preston found it. There is a little slot here for the screwdriver. You'd have to come from the back side. Never seen it like that, where you can turn this. Not sure which way it goes, but you'll turn it one way or the other. One way will expand these against the rotor, and the other way it will contract them so that you can get this off. But luckily for me, it came right off. Alright, there's the new rotor. We are upgrading to drilled and slotted rotors. So if yours is not marked, that's how they go. The slots will face the rear of the vehicle. If you buy these from the auto parts store or maybe some other places, they will have a coating of grease on them for packing purposes so they don't rust while they're in storage. However, these ones come dry from my supplier, so we don't have to worry about that. But you want to check that first. Make sure there's no goo on it. If there is, you need brake parts cleaner to clean that shit off first, or your brakes will not work very well. As far as the pads go, these little prongs here are the squealers. That's what makes the brakes squeal, to let you know that your pad is running low and needs replaced. Some sets only come with one squealer per side of the vehicle. Mine comes with squealers on every single one, but if you only have one squealer per side, then you're going to want to put it on the back side of the rotor, because the piston, with the piston being on the back, generally your back side will wear out the fastest. And that way your squealer, when it gets real low, it'll hit your rotor. So if you only have one, put it on the back, but for me, all mine have that, so it doesn't matter. Just take your C-clamp like this with the old pad and push the piston in to make room. Before you do that, you want to take the cap off the brake fluid reservoir. That way it won't be under pressure. That way you can easily push that piston in and the brake fluid will come up in here. Okay, so this whole assembly slides like that, see? So you gotta, when you gotta put it on the rotor, you might have to position it one way or the other so that you have clearance, so it'll go over the rotor. Okay, everything's mounted and balanced back up. Mounting bolts, we'll snug them down nice and tight. The torque spec is 70 foot-pounds of torque. Okay, when you put the wheel back on, it's important that you torque it in the proper step, because this is actually how you get warped rotor symptom. You want to follow a torque sequence. You want to torque these in a crisscross pattern, never one next to the other, so you can go like this, like a star pattern, like this. So these you torqued about 100 foot-pounds on this car, 100 foot-pounds of torque. Crisscross pattern, you want to go in 3 sets, like 30, 60, 90, and then 100. I know that's 4 or whatever, something like that. Do them in the crisscross pattern, 30 foot-pounds, then 60, then 90, then 100, and you should be good. Drop it just enough to put a little bit of weight on it. Right there. Just enough to put a little bit of the weight of the car on it, because you don't want the full weight on it until you get it tightened down, because then your wheel could go cockeyed. Just so you can start to torque these down, and once you have them torqued down, then you can put the remainder of the weight on it. So like this, 30 foot-pounds torque, crisscross pattern. Then follow the same pattern, 60 foot-pounds of torque. And then 90, and then 100, and so on and so forth. I'm not using a torque wrench because I've been working on cars for 20 years, so I know about how much torque I'm applying, but that's how you want to do it. Okay, once you have your cap back on, last thing you want to do here, you want to, when you push this back in, your pistons aren't quite touching your pads yet. So you want to lightly push the brake pedal a couple times. No more than halfway down. Do it nice and light, nice and slow. Till it firms back up to normal. You don't want to do it fast, because some vehicles, they have a cutout thing, and if you blow a brake line, for example, it'll cut out the front or rear, whichever line it thought blew. That way you still have brake pressure for the other end of the car. So on a vehicle like that, if you push the pedal too fast, you may trick your system into thinking you blew a brake line. So that's why you want to do it nice and slow until it firms up. So once it feels like normal again, you should be good to go.